in order to tighten up your abs. It can also be a delightful form of onomatopoeia, one that I'm fond of. But in the game industry, crunch usually means something arguably less enjoyable and is frequently a hot button topic that permeates the discourse in our industry. So today, we're going to dive into this spicy concept from a QA perspective, discussing potential causes, some mitigation, and any potential positives, if any, in crunch. So I'd like to start, if you don't mind. I know we can't see Myron, but I want you all in here. We're going to do our lightning round. So most people in the industry have your crunch stories, where whether it's been, I don't know, maybe a really exceptionally long crunch. There you are. Hey, buddy. Look at you looking
Hey.
fresh. So we all have our stories, whether it's like hilarious things, really good crunch dinner, or miserable crunch dinner, or exceptionally long crunch times. And I would like to hear something from each of you in any of those categories or some other ones. So why don't we start with Myron?
Yeah, so I think one of the really important things I want to make sure that people understand is, well, actually, no, this is a lightning round. Crunch. 4 to 6 months. I was at an insurance company that just got a bunch of money ahead of the Affordable Care Act, and so one of the primary drivers for this project was to automate as much as possible because with the aspect of getting unlimited money from people coming into the business and not having to market it all, we had to reduce the amount of administration that we could charge to only like 25%,
Oof.
which and before that, like insurance companies were able to print money.
Mhm.
And so this crunch lasted 4 to 5 months, I think, or 5 to 6 months, and it was mandatory overtime, 7 a.m. check-ins to like 1 a.m. Final calls. Over the weekends, there was no vacation, and it all culminated in the senior leader saying, and I quote or paraphrase quote, right? So literally, but a Midwest literally, if I go down, I'm not going down alone.
Jesus. That's so
And so
intense.
that was, yeah, it was intense. It was intense. I luckily from a
Spicy.
strengths perspective, I have disharmony. And so I was able to speak truth to power a number of times. That made me sleep really well at night, even though I hardly got any sleep. So yeah, crunch.
Oof. 4 to 6 months. Now this is actually something we'll get into later, but like the fact that you were able to do this, like show it in like in a non-game setting, like whoa, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Chelsea,
Yeah.
what have you got?
Sometimes I've been in a lot of crunches.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't want to tell those stories, but I want to kind of change it to being that crunch isn't always about the state of the business, it's about the state of your life. And so the most intense crunch in my life was when I was working 3 jobs during the holiday season. And I was working in the game industry by working at GameStop. For those of you
Mm-hmm.
who have worked at GameStop, you understand what that means. It means a lot of late nights, it means a lot of schedule shifting, it means a lot of customer service. Retail professionals, I'm so thankful for you, especially during the holiday season. I was also working 2 restaurant jobs at the same time. Um,
Damn.
so I was working really early mornings in a coffee shop. I was working middays at GameStop. I was going to a restaurant being a bartender waitress and then finishing up my night at GameStop in some cases. Um, and I wrecked my relationships during that time. I had to do it to survive. And so, what I'm going to be bringing to the conversation today is that crunch isn't always just about the amount of time and the amount of work. It's about your financial situation, it's about your state of mind walking into it. And, I want to bring that to being the forefront of the conversation because the game industry has necessitated this idea in some ways, and software industry and all of that. And Ginger just said it. Some
Mhm.
people come and say, "Can I crunch because I need the money?" And I want to talk about that. Let's talk about it.
No, I think that's a great example of just crunch in a life sense. I know I've done my time in retail, especially holiday retail. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you
And
for your service.
yeah. And the fact that you just said that you doubled on top of that, not only with retail stuff, but also throwing in two separate food service jobs.
Yeah.
That's that is crunch. There it is. If nobody has worked in like the game industry sense, like that is it. That is the best example I could hear about it. And talking about more of like what you mentioned with Ginger saying about can I crunch because I need the money? Definitely, we should be hitting that. That's an important piece of this puzzle.
Can we
Um,
create a scale and just ask the audience, the crowd, real quick? All right, so like from a scale of 1 to Chelsea, how much crunch have you been through in your career?
in your career, okay, from 1 to Chelsea. No, this is good. This is a fair scale.
uh, I, you know, like I can't wait to talk about this more, Chris, because I also think that crunch has given me the best identity with some of my teams that I've ever had. Like
Mm,
I it's the war story idea, and I know a lot of us go off of that, but
hmm.
memories and teammates are made, you know,
It's
during
agreed.
those times.
Yeah, you kind of grow together because it's like forming those bonds through adversity kind of deal.
Hmm.
My example is going to be more of a kind of like a very short war story. I've done the like 2 months of crunch very early on in my relationship with the game industry. Wow, in my industry
I mean, it's
career,
real.
that's what it feels like sometimes. And but the one that really was like a crunch, it was like an unforeseen and in my mind should have been unnecessary form of crunch was a last minute. It was a game that I needed to ship, and I don't know. It was right before cert. It was a small game, but right before cert, we ended the contract with our external help because it just expired. And it was like, okay, this will be fine. I planned ahead for this. And then the other QA that was on the team with me was laid off. So I was now
Oh
alone
no.
to ship a game for cert, and I had maybe about a week out from cert.
Oh
And
no.
I worked a lot really late to get that thing through certification and get its exit pass done. And that's one of those war stories and scars that kind of it sits there, and I remember that. I've had positive crunch experiences too, but I'll talk about that later.
Right. So you have so I would say all of us have the grizzled veteran wait, you like smell this like feel the wind and you're like I feel crunch coming, like
It's like,
let's start acting ahead of time so it doesn't like get all the way there, you know.
yeah, exactly. And this is like I've been in those positions, but this was one of those like, okay, I think we're gonna be fine. Then all of a sudden, had to crunch because I was literally the only person to do it, and
Mm.
that sucked. That sucked. All right, what a beautiful lightning round. All right, moving on. So let's start off now. This is interesting because Myron, you brought in like a non-games kind of version of this, but I figure we can start with a general definition of like what is crunch. So game industry definition pretty loosely. I did a little research and comparing like news articles and comments, and found that the best that I felt was a good way to describe this was overtime work in order to hit tight deadlines and or make up for missed milestones, often for extended periods of time. I feel like this is a pretty decent idea. Like this is crunch. This is the general feeling of it. And usually, like one of the things that I've bumped into is that people outside of games don't really know this meaning. And I've bumped into this before. I've said, "Oh shoot, I got a crunch next week," and people are like, "You got to do what?" And it's just unheard of. A good real life example is for about a minute, I worked outside of games, and I was interviewing somebody who for a QA position who is from games, and he asked me and one of my QA engineers, what is like, do you crunch and what and how often and what is it like? And the QA engineer in the interview with me, she looked at me and said, "What's crunch?" and she'd been working in QA for quite some time and just had zero idea what crunch was. But this person I was interviewing and myself, we knew because we came from games. So I was just like kind of laughing and being like, no, we don't. The crunch doesn't happen really here. It's like maybe you'll stay late one night here, but usually you're fine. But it was just intriguing to me. Like we both were just like kind of like, I don't know. I found it endearing almost that this person didn't know what crunch is and was just like, oh, that's nice. Must be nice. Oh man. Have any of you like bumped into similar situations where you're discussing like crunch? I mean, like I have to crunch in these situations with people who are not familiar with what happens in the game industry.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, but what I think you'll hear it called is overtime generally.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not that overtime isn't worked outside of the industry. It's that it's just looked at very differently. And
Right.
so, I've had discussions with it. I have to say, like, there have been many articles that have come out over the past few years. We've
Mm-hmm.
read them. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been on every major tech and game outlet that's there. I think, you know, we read about these things and people are getting more familiar with the idea of what it takes for them to make their games. I also think that in general, folks are talking about how the sausage is made in most
Mm.
industries a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one thing to keep in mind is that overtime and long days are not just us. I think that it is a different mentality in the game industry, and that's what
Mm.
separates us out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the non-game industry, like you said, overtime, Chelsea. For me, like I've worked primarily in financial services, and they call it mandatory overtime.
Yep.
But like mandatory overtime is generally called on by executives, and when they say mandatory overtime, that generally, like the Grizzle veteran, the wind, wait, the clouds, I can't hear the birds. That sounds like 2 months of mandatory overtime. Like you get a sense, like literally in the, in the leaders, like literally the way that they walk, the way that they hold their coffee. As a grizzle veteran, you get a sense for when crunch is coming, and like you can kind of like, and it's not a good look either way.
I like that you said griddled veteran instead of
Mm.
grizzled because it is kind of like getting fried.
I feel properly
Yeah,
seared.
yeah,
Definitely.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Lady Odd Dog Sarah, our amazing social mod, just made the point of working late on weekends a few days here and there is vastly different from weeks and months of working late and on weekends.
Mm.
So true. There are social things that happen to you when you are working crunch like that.
Oh,
There
100%.
are life things that happen to you. If you have not heard the story of someone splitting up with their partner because of their game industry life, it's real. And I have heard that story before. If you've not heard of people having disagreements with their significant other or missing out on their kids' XYZ or families, literally
Mm-hmm.
heard about someone skipping a funeral because of crunch for a family member, not like a parent, basically, because they had crunch going on, right?
Yep.
Um,
I've
Yeah.
missed my fair share of large events because of that. Like I remember missing a friend's wedding because crunch showed up and I couldn't get out of it.
yep. I'm gonna say this, and it's slightly controversial, but I think it's I work for a company, and Chris, you work for a company that have open PTO policies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can go into that as well. Like, not that our companies do crunch or don't crunch or whatever, but when you don't have a number of hours that you need to take vacation, that can be a major thing,
Yep.
right?
You don't feel that pressure to take the time, that need to take the time off, or else it's going to disappear. It's just like, oh, I just have it. It'll be fine. I don't really need it.
Yep.
It almost has
Yeah.
the opposite effect.
Yeah. See, like this is the thing. Like, it's almost like first it was taking away sick pay and changing into PTO,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, oh well, like uh, just it's open PTO. Like you're not entitled to like the cash, and so that changes things. And in a culture that is cultivated to accept crunch as normal, um, Like when I'm in mandatory overtime mode, or I've committed to too much, or
Mm-hmm.
my company is asking for too much.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that begins to happen to me is I begin to resent people for making me say no, and that causes the problems with my personal relationships.
Hmm.
And so I get really surly, like, no, like, I'm doing this, blah blah blah. Why are you making me do this?
Mm.
And they're just like, why, what, like, and so yeah, it can cause serious problems.
No, absolutely. Oof.
Another thing to kind of bring up is our industry employs a large amount of contractors who
That's
don't
true.
necessarily have the same time off um, rights, privileges, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
And that can lead also to the the financial implications of crunch. Like
Yeah.
we've created systems that allow for this when it does happen, for there to be a considerable amount of difficulty for people to take time when they need to.
No, absolutely.
You're not
Absolutely.
financially incentivized to do it. You are financially incentivized to sit in your seat and do your job.
Yeah, to be there and work longer hours because it directly affects your bank account and your
Yep.
life.
And the
Yeah,
idea that crunch meals make up for that is the crazy thing, right? Like, not
Yeah.
only are you financially incentivized, but we're going to pay for you to eat.
Yeah, we're also going to feed you a full meal that you don't have to worry about.
right.
Has anybody gained crunch weight? Because,
Uh, all the time.
Mhm.
Yep,
Mhm.
definitely. Absolutely.
Free pizza.
Especially like when I first joined the industry and there was like the first real crunches that showed up. Absolutely. All that free food. It was just like, yeah, I ate like I'd never really had food in my life before. And it was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, what is this Thai food? Oh, we're getting from this sushi place. Oh man, I want this thing. What's my limit? Oh, I can get this much. Great. I want XXX. I want all of these. I want this pile of Chinese food. Let's go. And man, that crunch weight, that's tough.
yep.
That's tough.
I mean, you have nothing else to do. You have no time to do anything else but eat while
Mm-hmm.
working. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting thing. Um, that creating these incentives for people to be like in the office all the time. Like there's something interesting about that.
Mm. So let's talk. So we're talking about what things that tend to like this. This is awesome. We've defined crunch. We've talked about some bits about um, like what it can mean, how it can affect people, which we'll probably jump into some more definitely later. But let's talk about where does crunch actually come from? How does this happen? How do we get to this point where we need to do these extra hours on our project, or where like not only just like okay maybe a few hours weekends here and there like what Lady Auto said, but like what Sarah said, but also like these long 4 to 6 month stretches of crunch. Like, how do we end up getting there? I mean, an easy way to put it is poor planning, trademark. But
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? What does that mean by poor planning? Who is planning poorly? Is it just engineers? Is it leads? Is it the senior management? Ooh.
Well, what I've seen is there are a number of aspects to poor planning, but I'll talk about two of them.
Mm-hmm.
When the team that's in charge of the product success in the market
Mm-hmm.
doesn't talk to the team that's responsible for building it. And so the team that's responsible for launching the product and owning the product in the market,
Mm-hmm.
they'll do ad buys. They'll make promises, and those promises aren't attached to what's possible. And there could have been easy ways to be like, all right, well, here goes, and we'll talk about this a little more later on.
Mm-hmm.
Here goes the go no go meeting that we'll have periodically to identify what's ready. And so you can, because agencies want your money, they'll take your money today or 6 months from now. Don't do the ad buy. Don't print out the cases. Don't make these huge orders until you know what's ready. But they don't tend to talk to each other, and
Mm.
this is what I see as one of the major causes of those promises being made, and then the development teams, the product teams having to crunch to get to those promises.
And
Yeah, I think Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to kind of make a bit of a tie-in where with Myron, you're talking about a little foreshadowing there with our go no go meeting. Kind of goes into what
Mm-hmm.
Ginger says in the chat of just like it's not only just poor planning, it's also faulty process. So it's like the
Yeah.
best plan won't save you if you have bad processes in the company. So instilling those better processes. So what it says you're describing, Myron, is definitely like a poor process with bad communication, not having like scheduled these go no go meetings, foreshadowing, can lead to this crunch happening.
Yeah.
Chelsea, what were you going to say before I
So
jump
actually, it
in?
was a perfect tie-in to what I was going to say, because I think
Ooh,
like
segues.
there's we can use data to understand, when things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't have a good idea of what it actually takes to make a game for our group, for instance, because we're a new team or we're doing something new, it can be
Mm.
really difficult. But a lot of studios now generally tend to take on a lot of the same sorts of work, or have a lot of ideas about what they might be doing,
Mm-hmm.
especially the bigger studios. So utilizing defect data, utilizing time to execute, utilizing the understanding of when things occur and how much time you need for cert and how long it took you last time and how long it might take you to get the tooling created that you need. Those kinds of things can be super helpful. And so, something that we've been pushing for on this podcast is the idea that there can be a formalization of quality process outside of the execution of a test case that can help us make
Mm-hmm.
better decisions. If we don't empower our groups and our companies and our friends and our coworkers to get this data, then we don't have a way of saying, like, quit doing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I understand, right? We should look at each other as humans and say, like, this isn't good. But being able to make dollars, business decisions, we need to
Yeah.
be able to empower that with data. As a quality professional, you have a unique way to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that that goes into the idea of like analyzing when, where, why, how. Are we RCAing? Are we keeping this as a service going forward? If we're keeping it as a service, let's start to measure really early to understand what that service looks like for updates.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And because it's not just the crunch to get a game out. We're in games as a service world now.
Right.
Very
Absolutely.
few products are released and let live.
Yes. And when you start talking about services, that's a magic word. There are amazing
ITIL.
frameworks that
Yep.
are complicated and they're so complicated that when people ask you questions and you say things like 44%, they may laugh at you, but it but there's science to this, right? Like we're talking about here like verification,
Mm-hmm.
validation, and reliability. Um, I happen to learn what because like I was in QA for a long time and I didn't know what VNV 14 or VNV meant. I felt what validation was and I kind of like did it, but like I didn't really learn it until I started studying like school psychology. But like those are three terms that come up when you talked about, Chelsea, services, looking at data, and those are really important things. I won't go into it in more detail, but if you're watching this, spend some time and look up what the differences are between those three things, because when you have that, that's that's a person who can do a lot more for an organization, again, outside executing a test. You
Yep.
begin, you become like a key aspect or a key person. You become, you have a key role in designing services, and as you said, Chelsea, we're really looking at software as a service, games as a service world.
No, that's real. That's good. So moving into more like what can lead to crunch with like poor process, this kind of like jumps into like poor processes and things like that. But it also there's the concept of like just late changes coming in. Now this
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuck with me. While I was kind of looking into some stuff that I wanted to pull out like on the internet, I jumped into a Wikipedia article, just kind of Googled video game crunch, and I found the video game development Wikipedia page. And this line hit me real hard. And it's the complexity of workflow and the intangibles of artistic and aesthetic demands in video game creation create difficulty in predicting milestones.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So like this is something that okay. So like over the past 3 years since I moved to Canada, I've been working at a lot of end to end um digital agencies,
Hmm.
which include creative, product management, you name it, strategy.
Right.
And one of the interesting things I found was that the QA team was having the same problems connecting and having their voices heard as product managers, as creative directors, service designers, CX designers, UX designers, etc. And uh, what? So I my undergrad I studied it was mostly music composition.
Hmm.
And the biggest problem that the creative team has is this problem. There's something about when you go to school for art or music, you submit your work to a panel of professionals, either in my case, composers,
Hmm.
and you can do everything right, but they'll be like, B. And you're like, well, why? I did everything right. Why is it a B?
Hmm.
Well, because Mozart's great 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 grandson is in your class and listen to that. That's amazing. So, and it's very difficult because there tend to be program managers, project managers,
Hmm.
dare I say,
Hmm.
producers who work in from a framework that is very finite. You get 100 points out of the class, and the score is an A. You code the things correctly, and you get all the points, and the result is an A. So there's no understanding at an intrinsic level of doing all the work and it just not working out. Like, and so what I've been trying to do in these organizations is create a way of working with the creative teams and the approvers so that we get that stuff, the fun, the design things done, uh, and ready for planning before they go into the very business like if you have all the points you get an A.
Yeah.
And so like figuring out how to do that is hard. It's hardly ever been figured out, which
Hmm.
is one of the points that's the biggest problem. But just for anyone out there who's never like been in a professional school or apprenticeship uh for like art or creative, like you can
Hmm.
do everything right and it will still be a B minus because there's an aspect of just like touching the human mind, touching the human like the fun muscle, and it being like, it's just not that good.
Yeah. You're really speaking to my music degree right now, and it's sobbing in the corner as we speak.
Yeah, but because of that though, like there's an opportunity as I like to use this word cross disciplinary technologist, right?
Oh
All
yes.
right,
I've been
it's
waiting for
so
this.
all right, and so when you're the only one in the room and all the people who are doing content creation or creative work are struggling and all the like computer science or business people are like, well, I don't understand why it just can't be done. Can't you promise in planning what's going to be done? It's like, no, like if we all looked at it and say it sucks and have to scrap everything, like we're
Hmm.
back at square one. We can't just make all that time up, or can we? This is- well, because like the leaders, they're like, well,
Hmm.
you can totally make that time up, right? And I think that's a big contributor to crunch right there.
Exactly. It's that feeling that you can just, we can just get all that time back right now.
Yeah,
I can't wait to talk about my tips later. I'm not
Ooh,
gonna
yeah.
do it.
pro tips. We're
Uh,
gonna get there. We're
yeah.
gonna get there. I love it.
Do we?
I love how excited that we're getting. And I guess this also ties into like making up the time. Also, is like one of the keys of like game development and stuff is that finding the fun. And sometimes it can take an exceptional amount of time to find that fun, and then now you gotta make up the time because obviously you can make up all that time that it
Yeah,
took to get to that final design choice, and that
and
can
I
lead
sorry.
to rough crunches.
I'm sorry for that those words right there, like the way that you framed it, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm kind of sorry, but not sorry for like saying it earlier before you presented it. But like, it's such a great framing It is this idea that you can do everything right and be like, you know what, this sucks. This isn't that good. Like, so what do we do now?
Exactly. So we have to just crunch, I guess. All right. So we should also, we've touched on this a little bit, but I think we should definitely make sure to exemplify the how this affects uh, us as developers when we have to do these extended crunch periods. Like, what is like the mental, physical toll and the motivation and morale that can hit the team. Now I know, like we talked briefly that we've all been into those crunch times, but and like this, it's hard. It's literally like not this like the mental like wear and tear of having to work these extra hours, even if it's like 2 hours a night for 4 nights during the week, and then you work on Saturday and you have Sunday off, right? Even that can just be draining after a while. And then there's the literal physical toll that can come with losing sleep, sitting at your desk for a lot of hours, eating, like we said, with gaining the extra weight from crunch food. Like that is a physical toll that can really like mess you up in the long term.
Yeah, I think with QA specifically,
Mm-hmm.
because even if you integrate as best you can, we are still the last check, honestly,
Yes.
to make sure that the build is good, that the build is ready to go. Something that I generally tend to fight a lot with more junior QA people and even senior ones is the idea that we caused the problem. And it's why I like to take the shift of mentality from QA being the ones that break things to QA being the folks that find and investigate where there are issues. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's a very slight shift, but if we say we break things, then we are naturally taking on this idea that we effed things up, right? That we
Right.
caused the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be really honest in saying, no, we found problems that already existed. We did not cause this issue. You, my dear QA person who are sitting there worried that you're going to report an issue, you didn't do this. And so we have to shift that language around that. And so not only are we already naturally predisposed to this, but take on the pressure of crunch and take on the pressure of not being present in our lives fully and all kinds of things. And you have a situation where the mental toll is really intense. We have a lot of weight and pressure on us. And we can't, if we approach our teams, especially as leaders, y'all, if you are a
Mm-hmm.
leader of a QA team, please don't tell your team they're breaking things. Please don't tell your team that everything depends on you. It doesn't. We are there to make life better. And you can see in projects, it doesn't always matter if QA tells you that there is a problem or a risk. It may still not get prioritized and get fixed.
Right.
And so that is also extremely difficult because you spent all of this time investing, missing your child, your husband, your wife's birthday, missing a funeral for your family member, missing out on normal sleep and normal meals and
Mm-hmm.
having a social life.
Mm-hmm.
You missed out and it still did not matter. You didn't get to fix what you found. And that is profound and deep
Yeah.
and not your fault. It is not your fault. If I want you to walk away with something today, crunch is not your fault, and you did not cause crunch to fail, and you did not cause your team to fail. The only way you fail is if you don't bring it up. That's it.
That's
I can
excellent.
walk away from the episode right now.
It's true. It's true. Like I like to look at it like quality is I think quality practitioners the role is to bring products to life. Um so it's a similar way of saying like
Mm-hmm.
you have so much to contribute to it. Like you bring in some cases the voice of the user. You look at the persona and you identify what types of things they would do, what types of things they would break, what types of mistakes they would make. You bring so much to bringing that product to life. It's not even funny. It's it's amazing. But like one of the things that I learned early on, or early-ish on, is that when in the case that a senior leader says, "Well, I'm going to accept the risk of crunch," and people will probably proclaim this at times, uh, and so so in those times, and I don't recommend you do anything from this, but just understand what you're in for and understand what your strategies are and use them. But for me, like I would say, all right, if you accept the risk, it's going to be risky. We're going to start cutting scope. Um, we're going to start cutting scope. Like there's going to be more stuff that's missed. You said you accept the risk, so it's going to be risky.
Yep.
Buckle up.
Yeah,
Yep.
because people, one of them, like leaders need to feel some of that opportunity cost. If you protect the leaders who are making decisions from all of the pain,
Mhm.
um, it becomes very challenging for the team. It becomes very challenging for the team.
Yep.
Do we think that AAA titles could ever truly navigate away from a crunch system?
So I poked at this during when we were having the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have an unpopular opinion. No, I don't think they can. And it's because of something that we talked about earlier. Publishing dates drive teams to crunch. Conferences drive teams to crunch. And I don't think that that's bad in terms of dates being a driver. I think investing millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in advertisements and stuff, that's getting money into the economy, gives people jobs, gives us life, gets people in front of it. Now, here's the problem with that. It creates a crazy amount of hype. The problem also is that if we delay, like some titles have done recently, there gets to be almost a stricter eye that comes to those projects. And
A lot of criticism, a lot of skepticism.
honestly, people shit all over games now. It's real hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think people realize sometimes if you're just playing games how hard it is to make games. So do I think, to go back to it, do I think that AAA titles can ever truly navigate away from a crunch system? I don't think that there will ever be a time when we don't have to work overtime to get a milestone out. Now, how we treat our people in those processes, we can absolutely change that. And I want to talk about some of that. I keep alluding to it, but I'm going to talk about a little bit of it later, how we can make it better. But I don't think that we should do months of crunch. We should just push dates. I don't think that we should. I think that if publishing dates are going to be a thing and we're going to stick to those dates, we will stick to a cycle of crunch being there.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you have that wall that's immovable, this cycle is going to continue. You need to be able to have that goal be achievable but adjustable in
Yep.
these times where so you don't destroy your workforce and cause people to leave and or at worst be like physically like hurt because they're trying to get this arbitrary date.
Something that's interesting in the industry, we see these superstar indies pop up where you have people who are
Mm-hmm.
major veterans,
Mm-hmm.
creating new companies with new ideals. And I
Right.
think a lot of the tenets for some of those is that they're navigating away from, even if they're trying to make AAA titles, they're trying to make AAAs in a sustainable way. And so
Mm.
we're not hearing a lot about this, but I see it. I see you out there, superstar indies with amazing people preaching. I mean, I've been in interviews for these companies where people are preaching work life balance.
Yep.
The
Exactly.
proof will be in the pudding. If this new way, if there's some innovation that can come up from these newer indie, soon to be AAA studios, let's just be really honest. Like some of these are going to be massive studios. If they can figure it out, we might have a way. So there's hope on the future. People, our generation, really the this second or third generation of rockstar devs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we're figuring it out.
Yeah, we're starting to get it and really push for that work-life balance and those
Yep.
ideals and ensuring that, yeah, we do love what we do, but we're more than just an artist. We're more than just engineer working on this game. We're more than just the quality assurance professional who's there logging bugs and creating scripts.
Yep.
Like we're
parents,
people.
we're travelers, we're adventurers, we're
Exactly.
spouses, we're
People.
friends.
Yeah, we're people. We're humans.
Yeah. Game dev is full of people. It's made of people.
What?
Yeah. It's made of people.
Controversial statement.
Well, and I think that's a big thing. Like, to your point, Chelsea, I think that AAA development, there are lots of strategies that can be used to avoid crunch, but until the general population, and so I'm going to take a little bit of heat off of evil leaders of studios, but the reality is that it's the average gamer that believes that people who are doing games are privileged, and it's something different than launching a bank app or launching a rocket
Yep.
to Mars or to Moon. That there's complexity involved, and that as stakeholders, it should be okay to have an honest conversation. So right now, there's no tolerance in the consumer of AAA games to have that conversation. Um, I would call that 20% of the problem. The other 80% is where the money comes from and the types of businesses those investors typically run. And there's this time value of money thing problem as well, that we will maybe talk about later in this episode, or even episodes later.
Yeah, definitely. So we've talked about this now that we've answered this question. So thank you. That's a tough question, and I appreciate the potentially controversial answers. But one thing that I would like to look into now. Let's start talking about like strategic mitigation, like how we as like quality professionals, like what can we do to help strategically mitigate crunch, and whether it's either full on preventing it, which would be a great idea, or at least doing what we can to remind people that this is a thing, or using our abilities to kind of help make it not as brutal as it can be.
Myron, you brought something up earlier that I think we absolutely have to talk about here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's this concept of a go no go meeting. And a go no go meeting is, and I'm going to summarize this in the way that I feel the go no go meetings give the most value. It is the meeting that you set up to determine what is ready and what is going to launch. And those things sound similar, they're different. This is the meeting you should be able to go and say, these 10 features are going to be in the next thing. They're not ready. They're not going to be ready. Here's the stuff that's ready. Here's the need that we saw in the market. And these are the things that we're going to launch. And so the key aspects of those meetings is that you have to have real stakeholders there, real priorities. And by priorities, I mean, when you prioritize something one, that means that everyone is aligned that we're going to pay for that thing to be fixed. Not just something that the QA team and the development team has to deal with. No, we're talking dollars here.
Yeah, exactly. Putting that monetary value on it is super important to get the point across.
Absolutely.
Ears perk up when you talk money.
Absolutely. Real constraints. What are the real constraints? And what are the real decisions that need to be made? So your go no go meeting should allow you to push dates, should allow you to drop features, should allow you to make to change the scope that was sought out. There should be no sacred cows going into the go no go meeting.
Ooh,
I love that term of sacred cow. I use it a lot.
I need to start using that more often. Can you elaborate that on a little bit?
Yeah. So, for example, if there's a feature that a stakeholder added at the last minute,
okay, let's say
they really like, yeah, they really want that feature. There no features are should be able to avoid the chopping block, and it should be a real conversation. Like, here's what we sought out to do. Here's the experience we sought to get. Here's what the reviews are. The usability testing or whatever the reviews that we've done so far. These are the features that we can deliver to get this thing done. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's the real timeline is.
Mm-hmm.
So like the real constraints should come out. Like the leadership team should not have like a double sided book of constraints where they tell the team, yeah, the only constraint is this date that was promised, but they actually have like, like Wyclef Jean like invested a bunch of money and wants to do a lot of this stuff. Like the real constraints should be on the table so that if there are 10 people in the room, there
Mm-hmm.
should be 10 individual brains working on solving how to get the product launched, how to bring
Yep.
the product to life. And everyone in that room, again, I said real stakeholders, everyone in that room should have an equal say, an equal vote on what goes or what doesn't. And the process should be clear. Like don't define how to make the decisions and what the steps are in the meeting. Like the process should be clear and approved and agreed and committed to when you go in there. Process, yes. And that's now if you've never had a go no go meeting or a launch decision meeting that sounds that hardcore,
Mm.
they frankly they don't happen like that often. And so this is your permission to make your go no go meetings great again.
Oh God.
You troll. Gross.
That's a tepid take.
Oof. So
Chris,
that's good. Yes. No, go
you
ahead.
brought something up. I was just moving things forward in
I
terms
love it. I'm into it.
of it, because I don't want you to have to be like, well, I came up with this idea. But you talked about something that I think was really good too. In terms of this idea of like making crunch better.
Mm. Oh, so the benefits of like a planned targeted crunch. Is that what you're? Yeah. So my thought is, it's like I use the term crunch because it's a term we all know as industry professionals, and we've all been through it. But I have before used a team. I have my teams do some crunch that was it was overtime for small bursts in order to like get ahead in like a preemptive kind of thing. So it was mainly to kind of the one that I really remember the most was literally for this game was in order to get ahead on our verifications and make sure that we get some new bugs in, get the old stuff out, ensure some systems are working really well ahead of the fact, because I knew that the rest of the development team, like the artists and the engineers, were going to be crunching as we hit alpha to kind of get all that polished stuff in. So we really needed to clean stuff out. So what it was is I talked with my team and said, we're going to crunch during this week and we'll do a couple hours each night. And we're going to do a check at the end of each night. And I'll do a check. I'll send everyone home and check to see where our numbers are at. And then we'll decide like, all right, do we need to keep crunching? And do a check in every single time. And then if we didn't need it anymore, we would stop. And that was it. And I gave them plenty of notice. And it was all as in a way to ensure that any overtime we'd have to do later, if at all, was minimized, because we got a bulk of this work out. And this was also because we were a small team. So I've had the benefit, a benefit of working on some really spicy projects with small timelines and microscopic QA teams, from just myself to me and one other person and an okay external resource to just like four of us and trying to get something out on a brand new platform. So trying to get ahead of what could potentially hit a small QA team, we went through it. I don't know if he's listening today, but another person who I've worked with, he was one of the ones that I worked with on this team, and he did a great job, and we all understood it. I was there every night with them, working with them, helping verify, get the issues out. But being able to have this like small burst, very controlled, and keeping tabs on my team. Like if after a couple nights they're exhausted and it's like, man, these extra 2 hours, especially with my commute, this is really rough. I'm like, good, you're not crunching tomorrow. That's that. Go home, go to sleep. I need you to be rested. I need you at your full potential in order to keep going. Just normal work day, let alone crunching. But we only ended up crunching like a few days, and that was it. And then later on in the project, we did a little bit at the end just to kind of get the thing like certification, just get it out the door. But it wasn't nearly what it could have been.
Yeah. Like there are a few aspects of what you described there that go into that um that are I was like thinking about role playing scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
um hashtag audible, and I thought, don't do it, Myron. But like that could be at the result of a productive go no go meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're out of time. All right, Chris, does it work? No, it doesn't work. All right, well, what do you need for it to work? Well, I need this, this, and this to work. All right, well, why don't we take the hit on that thing and begin communicating with the comms team right now to the community that this feature is going to be buggy and wonky, and just basically
Right.
put it out there. All right, so with these two things, what else do you need? I'm going to need a week. Okay, all right. If I can get you this person, this person, and this person, and the producers are going to help and the developers are going to help, what does that look like there? Well, I still need a week, but it'll be really good with that extra help. All right, cool, boom. That sounds like. And by the way, with a person like Chris and the team committing, because in that case, it sounds like you'll basically check in with your team. Hey, here's what the scene is. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what it looks like. Is everyone committed to doing this? Actually, I can't do it. Okay, all right. The three of you who are left, plus me, can we do it? Yes. All right. Okay. Cool. Whoever can't do it. This sounds like a committed, well-formed team
Mm-hmm.
that's ready to perform and believes in the output because they've been
Yes.
empowered to do it. They
Yes.
haven't been forced to do it,
Yes.
ordered to do it.
That's an excellent point. Being able to have everyone's buy-in and understand what the goals are, and ensuring that like they not just say like, yeah, I can do it no matter what, and soldiering through, but like, nope, yep, we can do this. I agree with the goal. We'll do, and we will get there. And I'm in. Um, like being able to set that goal and make sure, like, give everyone like a tangible time frame. Like, look, the plan is to do this amount of time. We're going to do check-ins to see where we're at. If we can end early, we will, but we're going to at least do this much, or
Absolutely.
hopefully only have to do this much.
Yeah, and this is like some other ideas. Like, yo, all right, for this week, my team doesn't have to come into the office.
Mm-hmm.
All other work is paused. We're not even going to tell them. So, leadership team, y'all, handle that. Uh, Everything else stops except this thing. And by the way, none of the developers who are supposed to help us can work on a single line of code. Like, let's talk with DevOps and literally shut off it and just deliver controllers. Like, we're a whole team. And it's
Exactly.
about being a part of the whole team. One of the things that's really moved me earlier that you said, Chelsea, is this idea that the QA team is the only team that's giving their all. In the end, a lot of those bugs don't get fixed, and we feel crushed.
Yes.
That is a clear sign of not being treated like that feeling of being crushed and that what you did didn't matter. If you feel like that at any point, you're not being considered as part of the whole team. And that's another thing that's very difficult
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in the average quality practitioner career, is this idea that you're transactional. And that's another aspect of that.
Yeah. Sarah brought that up actually this week in the Discord. If you're not a member of our Discord, hop in. There's a lot of really great discussions, but Sarah actually brought that up, like, hey, we're considered a service team. And I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. Like, there are worlds where QA teams exist like that. I've been on many of them.
Yep, same.
You just have to be really specific about your requirements if that's going to be your role. And you build your identity in a different way. And that's okay. It can be very empowering. Like, you're not doing it wrong if you're not fully embedded, but you have to make sure you still have a seat at the table, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Process.
Pro.
Emphasis on the pro.
Emphasis on the pro.
So crunch like we can happen. We've talked about it, but there are some things that we can do in order to try and keep, when we do have to do it, even if it gets into those long extended times, to try and keep a positive spin on it for our own physical and mental well-being. So I'd like to hear, like, as industry professionals, as leaders in our discipline, I would love to hear how you keep things positive during crunch?
I mean, I'm happy to share my tips for that. I think one thing to note is that crunch doesn't have to be about sacrifice. We oftentimes make it about sacrifice, but it doesn't have to be about sacrifice. Uh, Chris, you mentioned a really cool premise of like rotating crunch. So
Yes.
not everybody has to be in all the time. It does not have to be all hands on deck. The sails are on fire. We're fighting a war. So it doesn't have to be about constant sacrifice, right? If you have a team that really needs to crunch because they're working with a group of devs specifically on something, then do that, right? It also can be, hey, let's get all hands on deck so that one team doesn't have to sacrifice their time. That also helps spread out subject matter expertise. So, you can have the reverse of each situation be true and very thoughtful for the situation at hand. The other thing is, crunch is about making sure we're building the best thing, right? We're doing this because we want to build the best thing. So make sure that if you're asking about it, talk with your leaders about, can we make sure we have enough time to actually fix the things that are brought up in crunch? Hey, give us an extra week. If you're really working towards building the best thing possible, make sure you have time to build it or rebuild it.
Yeah.
And so just make sure that your crunch isn't a quick pass before the cert, which it often is, right? But you get the opportunity to say like, hey, generally we find about 100 issues. 50 of them are, minor or, visual in nature. We're not going to fix those. So 50 things have to be fixed. Again, use that data to your advantage so that you can make sure that you're building the best thing possible. Now I'm going to give you my leadership tips.
Ooh.
And this is what I think of when I'm building a team or running a team. Chris, you said it. Notify the team as soon as possible, right? Let
So
people know
important.
that they're gonna miss out on date night. Let people know that they're gonna miss out on their D&D session, so they should tell their group ahead of time. Let people know so they can reschedule their doctor's appointments even. I literally have been in this situation where I'm like, I gotta go to the dentist, but I'm crunching right now, so just let people know early so they can move their appointments. Some of that stuff can be financially really bad. And also realize that people have lives, and so let them go to the dentist and come in later.
Exactly. It's like,
Let them go buy a car if they need to go buy a car or take their car in.
Exactly.
Don't.
And for you men over 40, you cannot put off that colonoscopy.
Yes.
Your wives and your friends and your partners have been
Yep.
trying to get you to do it. You have to do it.
Yes.
Man up.
It's real life.
Or colonoscopy up.
Don't.
Sorry.
It's fine. Don't miss out on the
A lot of
sonogram
ups in those
appointments for your
statements there.
partners. Like I think be there, be present, be the partner you want to be there, be present, be the roommate that you want to be, the daughter, the son, the person that you need. We as leaders get the opportunity to give the team notice and to make it acceptable to miss out occasionally and give the team the opportunity to adjust. What if you allow people to come in earlier to do their crunch hours instead of staying late at night?
Yeah.
I'm a morning person.
Yep.
I do much better. At 10 o'clock at night, you're going to lose me.
Have absolutely done that myself because of just at the time it was easier for me for my commute than it would have been to stay late. And I've had other team members ask to do that, and I've absolutely accommodated because I know they're going to come in and they're going to get stuff done. Maybe they're the ones that are going to do the smoke for a while because they can find some early things by getting that extra hands and extra eyes in there early.
Can I
Myron's got his hand up.
Absolutely.
I take naps, and I need naps.
Yes.
But in those cycles where look, the team's not going to be in the office, we're going to work from home. One of the things, but one of the things you get from me is I'm your guy from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. with the offshore team. I'm your dude, and I'll be at the 7 o'clock meeting to do the briefing and leadership handover. I'm your guy for that. But I may be napping at 1 p.m. Like that's my process. Like it's about flexibility. Like you give some flexibility
Yep.
And people will tell you what their superpowers are to support crunch.
Yep.
Like, it's amazing what happens when you ask people things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think it's really quite amazing to see what people can do when you give them the freedom. As a leader, just to note, if you allow people to do flexing, hours, whatever, you need to have a plan. So you need to give a list to your team of the objectives of what they need to complete. Don't just say like, we're here to get everything done. It means you need to have a plan, right? You need to walk through it and you need to be able to understand what it means to have someone in early or in really late, or, what does it mean to be a man down or a team down or whatever, right? Also, I have seen people miss team activities because of crunch. Don't let that happen. If the engineers are all going out to go karting, don't let that happen. That allows inequity.
Mm-hmm.
Do the team stuff, figure it out. Hey, if the rest of these engineers or these artists can go out, we're going out too. That brings me to my second point. You need to make sure that other roles are present for crunch. It is not just a QA problem. Do you have an engineer on call for all the teams? Do you have an artist on call for all the teams? Do you have the contact in your network operations center if you've got a knock? Or do you have a live producer that you're working with? Or do you have the executive producer's number? You need to make sure that people are not only just available, but also with you. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have an engineer sit there with you
Yeah.
and look through things. So don't make crunch just a QA problem. It probably isn't, but I just want to make it a reminder that sometimes we can envision QA as being the like sole objectives of crunch. Sometimes you're not alone. Make sure
Soldiers.
you get your team there with you.
Space
And
Marines.
and that means you need to be there too. Right? Chris said it. He was
Mm-hmm.
like,
You got to be
I
there.
was there and present.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask people to come in if you're not willing to come in yourself as a leader. Just
And I
real
was,
honest.
yeah. And also as a leader, make sure you're the last one out. Like, I would send everyone home first and make sure they're done, they're done, because sometimes you'll leave and that other person will stay longer.
Yep.
And
Very true.
sometimes you need to be there to kind of enforce that work-life balance. Be like, yeah, I know you're passionate about this thing. You need to put it on hold. It'll be there tomorrow morning. Go home, get some sleep, go see your family and your friends.
Yep.
Yes.
And that means you as a leader also need to be able to delegate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have a life thing, remember that you set the example. So
Yes.
if you can't take time off, if you can't go to the doctor, if you can't do those things, no one
Mm-hmm.
around you is going to feel safe to do those things too.
Absolutely. And I want to
And
repeat process. Sorry,
go
Chelsea.
ahead.
I want to repeat. I want to repeat process here, because as a leader, especially if you, in the rare occasion, get to build your team and handpick your team and define your process, you should be able to go to Paris for 5 days and everything run, or do what you can to create a scenario where you could like go to Paris for 5 days and the team sees that and it's visible, and you have process that allows you to check from time to time on your phone how things are going, but you have delegated to people so that you know what's going on and they know that they can. There's something very empowering in knowing that they have control of all the decisions when the boss is gone. You said equity earlier, Chelsea. Uh, Man, there's nothing more to improve engagement and commitment than giving people equity over the decisions and agency over the decisions.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep. Um, One thing that we've done on a team that I'm on right now, which is Wild Rift, is we do an exhaustion tracker, and it tracks how you're feeling about things. Are you physically exhausted? Are you mentally exhausted? And there are
Mm-hmm.
metrics there, and I hope that I can share it. I'm actually asking if I can share some of this, but
Yeah, I would love to
um,
see that.
it is literally a Google form that we send out as managers to track that. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost more important during crunch that you're tracking exhaustion and not just exhaustion in general. Like, yes, it's important that you track exhaustion in day to day, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
during crunch, it's really important that you have a check in with folks. Are
Yes.
you maintaining your one on ones appropriately as a leader? Are you making sure that you're checking in and saying, how are you feeling? It is not how
Mm-hmm.
are you. It's
Mm-hmm.
not how
Yeah.
you doing. It's not how's life. How are you as a human
Yep.
feeling?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if someone asks you that question, it is your job to not say good and move on.
Yeah.
Again, you are the example. I'm exhausted. I'm having trouble with my anxiety. I feel a little bit depressed. I'm having trouble at home. I'm having trouble sleeping. All of those things, you don't have to feel like you have to give them your life story, but if you can't be honest with that, they're not going to be honest with you. And if you don't want
Right.
that relationship with your team, I'm going to be honest, don't be a leader where you have to talk about crunch stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
it's okay to be the stalwart leader who's pushing, but you need to acknowledge the difficulty. Be like, yeah, we're going to get through it, but it's going to be hard, and it's hard for me too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. There's know your strengths. Know your strengths as a leader. Know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you're not good at that kind of thing, there's a lot of strategies, there's a lot of protocols you can use, leverage process to help you
Yep.
with those things.
Use that exhaustion tracker that I was just talking about. It
Yeah.
doesn't require a conversation. You just follow up in the end.
I'm
Yeah.
intrigued.
So I'm gonna do a couple of quick ones here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Make dinners and activities, make them fun. Get people to stop. Something we used to do was make everybody get up from their computers and come and sit during crunch dinners. Like, you can't sit and work with your food. You have to get up, come to the center, eat. Everybody sits down and talks. We'd play a few games. We'd even play physical games like card games and stuff like that, just to get people out of the thing. You can also make awards. You can make silly gag gifts. It's the time when all of the jokes, the inside jokes for the team, usually they crop up during crunch. Someone says something ridiculous. I once got caught in a hailstorm because I went out for an afternoon run. It became a joke from that point forward. Like, you make things fun, make
With
people
art and
laugh.
everything, those are the best.
Yep. Yep. Daily check-ins, I mentioned it earlier. Make sure you're checking in daily with the team at the very least. And I don't just
Mm-hmm.
mean the QA team, I mean the bigger team. If y'all are crunching, you need to know what's going on the leadership level.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta know. If you're not working in an agile process, totally fine. It's okay. Don't stress. We're not pushing that process on you, even though all of us may prefer it. You still got to check in. Get that EP, get that person, form a relationship. They're going to know that you care because
Right.
you are coming to them to talk to them. Don't
Yep.
let them come to you. You are automatically not giving yourself equity.
Yep. You
You
need to
go
be
see
forward.
them.
You need to be
Be
that engaging person.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Be the leader that you want. I need to know where we are with this. I need to know what these defects mean for my team.
Mm-hmm.
Real buy-in is what matters, and real buy-in that what we do matters. And this is how you get it. You start with the daily check-ins, you show your data, you show how we're doing, you show the burn down. You take it on yourself to prove it out. Get the buy-in. Get the company to understand why you're there. You are not there to break things. You are there to show the risk, the quality risk for not doing something. Change the narrative. And then lastly, Ginger brought this up, and I think it is the most important thing. Unfortunately, crunch makes a financial impact on people's lives. If you are in a group that regularly works crunch and you have hourly employees, there is a chance that they are looking for that income
Mm-hmm.
because it can be a very big part, even 50%. I've heard of it being 50% of people's annual income, their overtime that they've worked. And that is a big number.
That's a huge
Imagine if you
difference.
go from getting $20,000 to $30,000 a year to $60,000 a year is a huge quality of life change. It's huge. It's the difference in living alone. It's the difference in being able to eat healthily, have a gym membership. It's the difference in being able to afford healthcare. Serious
Yeah.
answer, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
You need
Yeah.
to understand what the financial implications of overtime are if you're taking it away, if you are changing the narrative on it. If you're asking people if they want to do it, they may have to. You don't know what their circumstances are. I was once paying for 2 mortgages at one point in time because I needed to help my family. Financial implications for things are real big, you know? And when people want to be at work, you don't have to ask them why. Just try to figure it out, right?
Mm.
That's the last thing I'll leave you because I think that that's the biggest one. Don't
That is huge.
F with people's money is one thing I was told very early in my career as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Crunch F's with people's money.
That was a good list, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Myron, can we get some final thoughts from you?
I mean, I think that list was dope. I think the conversation that we had while that list was going down, were really good. And you know, what I come away from this is that and Chelsea's leadership style is very similar to mine.
Mm-hmm.
What you described was a dope team or a high performance team. These are things that leaders who want to. Now, there's multiple approaches, but when you have a high performance team and the leaders checked in and plugged in, you understand like what the people who you, in my opinion, my leadership style, you're responsible for need, in challenges and opportunities to grow, and in financial. Um, it doesn't take a brain science; it just takes checking in enough for the person to feel that they trust you enough to say, "Hey, look, here's what I'm saving up for. Uh, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that?" And you don't have it doesn't have to be personal either. It can be, "Hey, look, here's how much I need to make an hour, and you need to make that happen for me, or I'm going
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else." So I want for anyone who's taking this as it being too emotional. No, we're talking about process, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're sharing our experiences, how we manage these things.
Yep.
But like, if you pay attention closely, there are process steps and things that we recommend you look at, because ultimately you make the decisions for you and your group. But these are things that we've seen work, and you're seeing them how we implement them in our leadership style. But take them and convert them to your own. But make it work for your team and make it work for others. That exhaustion tracker, tracking engagement more than once a year. These are things that, right? Like
Whoa.
hashtag YOLO. I had to do
Slip
it. I
that
had to
right
do it. But these are things that like and give people a way to like have their voices heard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not just heard, right? Because there's a difference in hearing, listening, and then changing,
Yes,
right?
Mm.
yes,
And I
yes,
think if this year, well, let's call it the past 12 months has taught us anything, it's that there's a difference in someone hearing you and someone making the change,
yeah,
doing the work. Do the work, folks. You don't get a seat at the table. I've said this a few times. The table is a potluck. You got to bring something with you. That means you need to listen to get an idea of what dishes are already on the table so that you can bring something people want. Thank you, Jane Jeffers, for that amazing talk.
hell yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I think we've hit some awesome points, and this is definitely a conversation that will probably continue within the discourse of our industry and our discipline going forward. But I feel like we've had a pretty healthy one, hit some important issues, and hopefully we can continue having this conversation in our Underground QA Discord and maybe on Twitter.
Yes, please.
So usually this would be our bug of the cast, but considering it's the top of the season, we're going to do a quick reminder for everybody to, if you have a bug that is one that you just love it, whether it's you found it in your favorite game or your favorite like piece of software, and you just think, man, I need everyone to see this because it's hysterical. One of my favorites so far from last season, and I love saying last season, was that train getting suplexed in
Oh
Final
my
Fantasy game. I'd never
gosh.
seen that before, and it's
Yes.
beautiful. It is beautiful. So we're definitely going to I'll call out to our community. So if you have any bugs that you've seen that you would like us to call out as our bug of the cast, please submit it via our email. Which email do we use for this?
Same one that's listed there, I think, in the doc.
Yeah,
It is
undergroundqaconf at gmail.com, or you
Underground
can,
Game QA Conf.
yes, undergroundgameqaconf at gmail.com, or you can add us on Twitter at undergroundqa.
Or on Instagram.
Or hit us up on Instagram. Man, we are
We're
all over
also
the socials.
Underground QA on Insta.
Awesome. So with that, I just want to say that's it for us. I want to thank Myron and Chelsea, per usual, for joining us today and having a lovely discussion. Would also like to thank all of you for listening and for watching and for participating in the chat this morning. So thank you very much. And in addition to Bugs of the Cast, if you have any ideas, suggestions for future topics, please reach out to us. We would love to hear them, and we'll potentially bring it up and start talking about it. And if you are a QA professional and would like to be on the podcast, we'd love to have you also. So either way, just feel free to contact us, undergroundgameqaconf@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at undergroundqa. Same thing on Instagram at undergroundqa. So before we leave, anybody have anything they would like to plug? Chelsea?
Oh man, I would love to plug a moment of mindfulness for you. And what I want you to do every day is take a moment to look at something that makes you smile or makes you think, man, that's beautiful, or I love this. And I want you to acknowledge it and savor that thought. And I'll tell you what mine has been lately. I put up a hummingbird feeder in my little patio area. Los Angeles land is very sparse, but I do have a little outdoor patio that I have a little planter with a hummingbird feeder. And every day when I see those hummingbirds land, that is a moment of gratitude. So share your gratitude, savor the moment, be mindful, know that it's hard. This is not a race at all. You're here, you're present, you're loved. We are here for you, my friends. And be mindful, appreciate the moment.
Cool. Thank you. Myron.
I have two plugs. One is a game, speaking about mindfulness and just doing something that just grows your energy exponentially. It's a game called Kind Words.
Ah, I
Um,
love this game.
it's
Thank you,
it's
Myron.
it is super cool. You just listen to lo-fi beats and share what you can. Don't share what you can. Like control your energy, manage your energy, but just be a part of that wonderful community. It's pretty cool.
It's a great community.
Yeah.
Myron bought this for me when I was in a low point. I'm going to share this. Myron bought this game after I was having a bad day. He sent it to me. I mean, it was rough. And I played for like 2 or 3 hours that first night. It was so impactful. It is a great game, folks.
Yeah.
Do the thing.
Yeah.
That's an excellent plug.
And my second plug is in light of what's going on, the fact that we actually covered um, Black Lives Matter in a series before, I just want to show you that as a person from North America, like the way the truth is written, it's the truth that we understand, and that it has taken me 6 years to come to grips with my anti-black racism, my white supremacy as well, and that I'm still working on it. So I recommend in my second one these two books slash journals. And I'm actually working through these because we're all as North Americans not fully responsible for the worldview that was programmed into us, but we're responsible for what we do when we encounter solutions. And the reason I'm recommending these two journals, Me and White Supremacy, a guided journal, and Be Anti-Racist, is that these are books as well, but the guided journal is going to help you come to grips and make it personal. Like, what do you understand? What your understanding are, and what can you personally do to be anti-racist, to challenge white supremacy? And I'm currently working through these books myself, and I'm black, but I'm from North America. I'm from America, United States, and like literally, if you never read about any of these things or that these are things, then you won't know. I've been to grad school twice. I have 128 credits after getting my master's degree from some of the dopest schools, and I didn't learn about any of that stuff. Um, and so I can appreciate that other people don't know either. But now you know.
G.I. Joe?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes. Yes.
Appreciate that reality check, Myron. Thank you. My plug is very aggressive and is especially poignant this weekend to some people that are in my circles, and it is fuck cancer. So remember that, everybody. And with that, thank you, everyone, for another wonderful stream. Thank you for joining us. A reminder to keep playing, keep testing, keep washing your hands, and one day I won't have to say this, please wear a mask. Take care of yourselves, everybody.